Well, good evening. This is the Portsmouth Coffee Talk Edition show. I'm James Slim Overton, and I'm here with co-host Thomas the Colonel Chapman, and Leah is at another event tonight, so she won't be with us. But we also have guest hosts John, Melissa, and Conrad. Hello, everybody.
Hey, hey.
All right.
So we're going to have a conversation today. And look, I've been dealing with a cold. It's getting better now. Earlier today, Colonel, I was like you. I had a voice like Melvin Franklin. If y'all don't know who Melvin Franklin is, he was the bass voice of the Temptations. So I was trying to hold on to that, but it wasn't blessed with that voice. But anyway, a lot better now. So if you see me go off camera or mute my mic, I'm sort of clearing the airways, so to speak. So, but anyway, we're here tonight, and we're gonna talk about fascism. And well, Colonel, we hadn't done this in a while, so Colonel, before John is going to lead us in the discussion, and before we go, Colonel, go ahead and give the disclaimer just in case we need it.
Okay. For those out there in electron lands and throughout the world, and we just need to say that the views stated on this program are from the guests and the host, and no third party or nobody else. It's just us, our opinion, and as we talk, and we're part of the protected by the press. Are from the guests and the host, and no.
Okay, thanks, Colonel. And John, lead us off in our discussion tonight.
Well, I can piggyback right off what Thomas said. That in some countries, if you say those words that are against what the country approves of or likes, that could cause you execution, death, internment, and many of those countries are ruled under a fascist regime or authoritarian rule. So I wanted us to just sort of touch base on letting the people know what fascism is. So, Conrad, we were talking about the different steps of fascism. So, could you help us with that?
Yeah, I believe there was a pretty nice list, and right as I try to bring it up, an ad pops up into my face by, what was his name? Umberto Eco, who made a list of 14 common features of fascism. And I think what we'll be able to start discussing tonight isn't so much the glibness that is, hey, you are a fascist. It's more breaking down what we consider to be like a mentality of government. And that I believe we can go a little point by point here because he gave us about 14 suggestions as to what makes fascism as like a system tick.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, I could lead off with the first one, which is the cult of tradition. And we can discuss that if you'd like.
So, the cult of
Let
tradition.
me, John, before you go on, let me say one thing I forgot to say in the beginning. Those who are watching on Facebook, please share. And those watching on our live on our YouTube channel, please like. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and make comments. We want to hear from you. And please share as well. All right. Thanks a lot.
So, when you talk about the cult of tradition, are we saying that this is something that is brought up within the culture itself? That is what we used to do. We're trying to go back to the old ways.
For instance, what comes to mind, I know we're going to make a lot of parallels tonight to, say, the Republican Party, specifically a subdivision being Trump and MAGA of that. But what does MAGA mean? Make America Great Again. So when they coin such a phrase, that is a tradition that they're trying to get you to think about. Like, what is the American ethos? And they want you to strongly feel that greatness out of America. Great. America pulled it all together. It's like you can't possibly think any different than that. That is the tradition. At least I'm going to assume that that's what they might think American tradition is.
And for years, that word, "Make America Great Again," "America First," that has been used pre-Trump, pre-MAGA. I've seen it back into pretty much the 1860s when the Klan was using it on their documentation. What is America? America was not the immigrants, not the people that are in America today, not this welcoming arm of everybody. We to accept everybody. It's just that we accept certain people, and the other people we don't accept.
Mhm. Right. There's I think also on tradition, and since I'm the only woman on the panel tonight, I don't have Leah joining. I think that we also have to talk in the aspect of tradition in the sense of hierarchical um, authoritarianism. Like you've got, women, right? Um, there's a cross there between, when was America ever great again? Like, when was it ever great, right? Was it great for women? Was it great for the BIPOC community? Like, I would just like to know when America was great. But part of that tradition comes with the hierarchical statuses, right? You got men at the top, you got women. And then, of course, there's the intersectionality of people of color and men and women. So I think in the aspect of tradition, that is something we need to take into account for. I feel like when we talk about modern day right now, when we talk about modern day, like Make America Great Again, we're talking about people want it to be like Leave It to Beaver days. Is that what you want us to go back to? We'll
Mhm.
never be there. Like never, not ever. But it's like a mythic past. I think Jason Stanley says it. Like it's a mythical idea of what existed.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? One thing he said, leave it to Beaver. They want to go back, or the right or the Confederates don't want it to be leave it to Beaver. They want us to go back into separate but equal or separate but unequal and go back to actually
Correct.
near slavery days.
Right. But what they do is they sell it
Yes.
to their base as Leave It to Beaver.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, they're
It's
thinking
So
of the 1950s.
right,
it's
right.
it's
They sell it that way.
Right.
it's much more palatable that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people will not they don't want to believe that this country may go toward fascism.
Mhm.
That's one of the biggest things.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest issues they have. I think we have in the country is that we don't believe we can be bad, whatever bad is, and
Yep.
we can be bad at any given time,
Well, if you don't
and we can
mind,
go backwards at any given time. And when we start as a country putting us against them, we are actually doing that. And in the words, some of those steps that fascism actually are the steps that are being used today, and they're being said blatantly. And to the a few days ago, the ex-president said the word vermin, and the whole country just jumped up like, "Oh God, that's some new word. Why would he say that?" But they've been thinking that and playing that game for years.
Didn't Hitler use the word vermin in his 1920 speech?
and
Yeah.
Mussolini, so it is
And I was going to say Mussolini. I thought too.
a
Yeah.
very particular fascistic thing because that was one of the planks. I forget
Right.
which one of the 14 it is, but
Well,
the
it's
heavy
dehumanization.
emphasis of
Yeah,
dehumanization of a different segment of the population that you could safely otherize that way because when you're preaching to the larger sect of the population who will vote for you, they are not in that group. So it's
Mhm.
easily to make sure that you can get their support by isolating them, stigmatizing them, and that's the enemy. So it's easy to rally behind that.
And and they also have the issue where other groups that outside of MAGA, when we talk about the Proud Boys, the neo Nazis, those people would have their own agenda. Their agenda aligns with some of the parts of fascism, maybe not the others, but they believe that they're all trying to work toward better America in their eyesight, whether it be a totally white America or a totally rich person America. But it's always going to be a minority, another group, LGBTQ. Somebody else is always going to be the person to be stepped down on.
Well, because they use the America first, right?
Yes.
And they make it to be like, oh, it's all of us. But when you drill down into what America first actually means for that specific group of people, or authoritarians or fascist, it is absolutely the antithesis of that, right? And people don't realize we had, Nazi rallies in America. When what was it? Linden, Charles, was it Lindenberg?
Charles Lindbergh.
Yeah, Lindenberg. Yeah, and with America First, they were at Madison Square Gardens carrying their America First signs, supporting Nazis
Mm-hmm.
right here on our soil.
And that is the irony that right now we're looking at the quote unquote Hamas Israeli war, anti-Semitic ideas and actions, quote unquote that, because I have an argument with that. But in the 1930s, they didn't want the Jews in the United States any more than anybody else. And when the Jews from Europe were coming over on transport ships, they were sending them back to Europe, knowing good and well that they weren't wanted there either.
That's right. And they were using language in our newspapers, which was the, method, the main method of our ability as American citizens, not like right now where we can use social media and we have all this digital. They, the main place for people was obviously newspapers, and they would use language. They even knew that they had to use language to talk to the American people and say that it was that say a boat that had 900 Jewish people on it, right? That there were also other like Americans or essentially white people without saying white people because of the anti-Semitism, which also, by the way, came from Henry Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he has a history all to himself other than making cars.
Oh, yeah, his purchase of that publication and then turning it into what was it? He had four books called the International Jewry, and that was what Hitler took. He took our Jim Crow laws and he took Henry Ford's publications, and that's how he came up with his plan to people.
Isn't it amazing who America picks as their heroes? Yeah, and we've always been a country of distraction. We have one thing over here, but we have another message over here. We get their attention and have that message over here. That's getting to a lot of people, and that's always been the American way.
Yeah.
And you're told who's to be your hero.
Right.
You're going to learn the same heroes every year. There was Henry Ford, there was Rockefeller, there were these certain presidents, and then George Washington Carver made some peanut butter. And I mean, you hear the whole thing, you hear the whole story, but you hear their history, not the history.
And
Why do you think? I asked the panel, why do you think we as a nation are not more cognizant and more aware of what's the foreboding of what's coming toward us?
We don't realize how bad it was. As a general,
We don't know our history.
yeah, we are all subject of what we're currently living in, and we don't have a good appreciation for what we possibly haven't seen. For instance, I think I'm the youngest on this panel tonight, and
No, I am.
okay. So at 37, I'm like, I can only think back.
Everybody else can tell lies. Why can't I? Go ahead.
Fake news.
Fake news.
And I think that I don't immediately remember the study, but I remember someone saying once that a lot of people think that a lot of their past is what is considered like their own personal glory days, that everything happened to have been better in the past. So you can easily run on that as like a plank is, returning to the tradition, our glory days as a country, even though, as Melissa began saying, when was it really ever that great? in the past. It's
Mhm.
entirely possible that we are probably at our best now and we're only getting better, but everyone thinks it was better in the past because that's like a fault of our internal logic.
Right. And don't you think it also, like, I think that too many people rely on their information to come from their social circles or their like familial. They through their socialization, that's where they get like formulate their opinions and take their facts without researching them themselves. Like, and that's something that you have to learn. Like, I'll be honest. I mean, I had to be taught how to identify propaganda.
Mhm.
I had to be taught that's something I had to learn. And now I can identify propaganda pretty quickly. So that's part of it, I think, for me. And that's actually speaking from experience, to be honest, because I used to be that person that was like, I would hear little sound bites here and there and be like, oh, and then in a conversation somewhere else, I would parrot a sound bite that I heard without having actually vetted where the information came from. Right. Because they came from trusted sources like my parents who paid attention to politics so that I didn't have to. How nice of them, right?
Oh, great.
Right. So,
What's
You
the
know,
next?
isn't it? Go ahead.
I was wondering what was the next number you had on your list, Conrad.
Number two is the rejection of modernism. And I was thinking, what is a good example of that today? And I think that the big word that a lot of the Republican Party wants to run against in 2023 is wokeism, which
Yeah.
is something an entirely unto themselves. And when you think of wokeism, that is like the hypermodernism of us changing to be better and more inclusive and more accepting of so many different groups in 2023, which is something that didn't exist 21, 20, 19, 18, all the way back like that. So they are trying to reject that oncoming newness.
mhm,
And that would be another hallmark of fascism as like a practice, not so much like a government, but like a practice being against what is considered new.
mhm,
And see, it's so easy to tick off each one of those numbers and each one of those ideas or those stages of fascism and put it to what is happening today. And I would just think more people would be aware of that and be more concerned that we're traveling down a perilous course.
Yeah, for instance, number three that I have here on this list is the cult of action for action's sake. And how many times can we think in the past couple of years of big things that we are suggesting to do because it seems like it's better to be seen doing something? And if we
Right.
want to go back, say, to granted, this isn't only just a Trump thing with build a wall, because many different administrations and different iterations have tried to bring up the concept of building a wall on our southern border. But that became like a big thing to want to do in 2016. And then his first couple of years in office, build the wall, which wasn't really like a problem that it was fixed, but it fervored a flame. I'm going to do this. And then that's another great of act of I'm going to be seen doing something.
Right.
well,
Yeah, even if it has no results.
right. But also, I think that goes into the anti-intellectualism of fascism because the attack on universities and colleges and things like that, the ability to put forth a platform. One of your platforms is build a wall, which we're othering, we're dehumanizing, we're trying to protect our borders. And it was very easy with that group because they have no understanding about how the southern border works.
Mhm.
And they also don't discuss immigration coming from the northern border, right? So it's like
Mhm.
they don't even realize how like your xenophobia and racism is showing because you don't talk about the immigration issues we also have at the northern border. And that doesn't come up, but they also don't know how it works. Like like those people literally visualize a 30-foot wall going all the way across Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and that's not how that works.
Right.
Yeah, 1,400 miles of land. A lot of the landowners in Texas were actually against the idea of building the wall
Hmm.
because it separated them from their grazing areas, their cattle from their grazing areas, water access. He only built a few, a few hundred. I mean, he didn't build anything. He built 20 miles or whatever.
Yeah,
The
I was
rest
gonna say he
was,
only built like 14 or 20 miles or something. Yeah.
yeah. He only added extra security measures to a little bit more. But down here in Texas, I mean, that has not been a big issue with people. The border states, the border counties do have a problem with people coming across the border,
Right.
but it's more so that you don't have an immigration policy that's in place. And when he was in charge, his idea to put an immigration policy in place was to make an internment camp to put kids and people in,
Yeah.
and then don't give them access to coming into the country, and try to get them to go back out. And now we hear again he's saying the same thing. If I become president, I will make internment camps just not for the people on the border, but for any immigrants that I deem or
Hmm.
we deem are illegal immigrants or
Yeah,
illegal
right
aliens.
on
So
that thought. Remember, he had the executive order of multiple Muslim countries banning people from coming in as well.
yeah, and the asshole countries.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think another bullet point for stage of fascism was that somebody has to consider themselves the only person that can save the country.
Yeah, the macho man
Yeah.
image that he is singularly capable. Remember, that was at his the 2016 National Convention speech where he said something like, "I alone can fix it," or
Yeah.
something like
Oh
this.
yeah, I have that book. I alone
How-
can fix. I can
Yeah,
fix that. I have that
And
book.
how
but
often,
he said
especially
it
when he
this.
was talking about the wall, he was saying something like, "I am a builder. I have so much history building things. That's why I am going to be good because there's so much I
Right.
regarding his policies."
Yeah,
Right.
my
Right.
my generals, my policy. But he said the issue about the wall again just a few days ago. He said, and he told his people, I think it was in Iowa or West Virginia at a rally a few weeks ago or a month ago, that I am your retribution, that I'm taking all this heat to save you. I'm your savior. And
Yeah. And what's crazy is that he is not the first sign that he's an authoritarian dictator should be to all American people that he's not even addressing the fact that he don't even make laws. You aren't even a legislator. You just sign them. And the American people down from president to governor to mayor are not understanding that the legislative bodies, whether it's local ordinances, whether it's state law or federal law, happens not with the figureheads, right? Now, I'm not saying that it's not important to vote for them. I'm not saying that. Please show up and vote for them. But I do think that we are inversed in the way we vote in this
Hmm.
country because we put more priority on voting for these figureheads who actually have very little singular power, and the fact that he is campaigning on I can do all these things without any consideration of the people who actually are the legislators.
Yeah, don't forget how much the planks of their Project 2025 was about making the executive branch like
Larger.
supreme and everything else below
Yeah.
it.
Hmm. Hmm. Sounds
Trying,
like Netanyahu.
well, trying to creep towards to be a dictator. That's exactly what he wants.
Yeah,
And if he gets reelected, you might as well say democracy is gone, and
Hmm.
he will be a dictator for life.
Yeah, I
And
mean, the only thing he could do is sign executive orders that which would so I mean, I do think it does that, we have to take into consideration like the legislature, but he'll sign executive orders. We will get absolutely nothing done. Everything will be tied up in court. And then the American people will blame it on the wrong people like they have
yeah.
historically done.
Hmm. Yes,
Do you
you're so correct.
do you believe that the court system will help us or hinder us in this particular endeavor? Trying to
Maybe the lower courts.
I think the lower courts will help us, and then I think they will do what they've been doing, which is push it to the Supreme Court, and that's where the big concern is. And nothing is being done about the accountability on our Supreme Court. It's quite frankly terrifying, because you've got Clarence Thomas, you have John Roberts, you've got Alito, like they
Kavanaugh,
Kavanaugh, like Amy Coney Barrett, who
Gorsuch.
all have major conflicting
Anti-democratic.
anti-democratic like concerns with different reasons, right? Like being bought by Harlan Crow, who has had 8 cases at one time in front of the Supreme Court, and he's like giving them millions and millions of dollars in trips and stuff like that. But then you've got and him and buying his mom's place or whatever. I mean, the rule of law is already very fragile right now.
right. And they're thinking, and the feeling is that if a dictator comes in, they can tell you what the rule of law is, and that now we don't need democracy because that democracy doesn't work, and that'll be the lie that'll be being pushed. And the reason it's not working is because I hate to say the word guardrails because I heard that so much, but the guardrails that they supposedly put in place, the people that are supposed to put them in check, aren't there. Thomas, do you think the military will buy in on this? Do you think the military will do what he says do?
I hope not. I hope not. But there are generals out there that would bend to it. Because you have Mike Flynn, a 3-star, and Obama told him, he had to retire. But there are generals like that will do anything that are still on active duty.
Oh, and the amount of enlisted people.
Yes.
I mean, the propaganda machine for the conservatives has been fed into every military base for at a minimum of a decade.
Yeah.
And we have I'm going to say that it's relatively split in the military with regard to political affiliations, like it is in the rest of the country. And that's really scary.
Yeah. Well, it's gotten so bad. When Secretary Austin took over as Secretary of Defense, he said, I have to go back and teach, starting from West Point and into the NCO academies. We have to teach the Constitution and what we are all about, because it was so tainted during the Trump administration, especially, one of his political appointees, that he was breaking down the military slowly and promoting his generals that thought like him. And that's what he's going to do this time, because he's going to fire anybody that stands in his way. And so he will get somebody, if he has to get some colonel and promote him up to 4-star general, which he can do.
Well, in Tuberville, they basically, and I hadn't even really thought about this. At first, I thought he was just doing this just because he's a punk, but Tuberville, it's been posed lately that he's doing this to stop appointments, to delay until the 2024 election, so that these open seats can be appointed by Donald Trump.
That sounds very Mitch McConnell-like.
Yeah. Oh, very Mitch McConnell-like. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I just saw a status on Facebook, and they wonder if Tommy Tuberville could be charged with 400 holding penalties all at once, which is a great joke considering he used to be the Auburn head coach.
Well, you know what, Melissa, somebody had talked about to see if the judicial system is going to hold. And I'm not sure, we already talked about the Supreme Court, but the lower courts may not hold either this time, because we do have, he put in 280, almost 300 judges out there. And you see down in Florida with that's in his, what's his name, Clark or whatever. the judge down there that is actually bending over backwards to try to help Trump out.
Cannon.
Get
Eileen
involved.
Cannon. Yeah,
Eileen
Eileen Cannon.
Cannon.
And
Eileen
yeah,
Cannon.
and they are all dispersed out through the country, and we're stuck with these guys and gals until they're unqualified, until they pass on, or maybe lightning strike, or they go to a meeting and and lightning strike and burn them all up. But we're stuck with them.
Yeah.
There was actually a point where one was so bad that that during their hearing, the Republicans said, you've never even sat inside a courtroom and been a second. You haven't even tried a case. How dare you come before us to try to become a appellate court judge?
Yeah. I just pulled up Biden judicial appointment status report, and it says topping Trump seems impossible. It's from brookings.edu, and it's as of October 2023. And it says Biden's 139 confirmations at the end of August recess are lower than all but Obama's. Biden would need some combination of district and circuit confirmations totaling 92 to match Trump. And then to buck history by getting and filing 10 more Court of Appeals vacancies before the end of 2024, Biden will have to fill at least some vacancies in states with Republican senators. 8 of the 16 potential vacancies are in such states. So half of those vacancies are in those states.
A part of what I would say is the sentimentality, the fact that this is like a trait of them as a mindset, the Republican Party, that's what we could say that the party and the members are fascistic, is because of the two major parties, they would be the ones more willing to do something like that when they're in the legislative branch, not the executive branch, that they'd be willing on a point of their own personal principle to, across many different administrations, hold back judicial appointments so they can knock the executive branch and the judicial branch at the same time. They'd be that mentally aggressive to want to get their will done.
Well, like Melissa talked about, how Biden can't get his judicial appointments over because one, the Democrats only have really 48 true blue senators, with Manchin and Sinema being wishy-washy, and especially Manchin is more Republican than anything.
And remember, he's not running again.
Yes.
And Sinema left the Democratic Party and went as an independent.
Yes. So they only got 48. And so if you don't have 51 senators, then you can't push these things through, even though they could do all the tricks and trades to slow them down. But reason that Trump got him out, Biden's been sending one up at a time. You have hearings with one. Trump and them had, during McConnell's time, had 5 of them jokers sitting at the table.
Like a buffet, like a judicial buffet.
Yeah, and they just went through. And unqualified crooks and everything else, friends of friends. And just like the girl, and we talk about the girl in Florida, shouldn't be nowhere near a courtroom.
Amy Coney Barrett, she had literally never been in a courtroom. She has, Amy Coney Barrett has a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. And she was what I would call in Lawyerville a grinder. Yeah. She was a worker bee. And as a lawyer and a judge, she was.
Remember who had trumped that list? The Heritage Foundation.
Oh, Heritage! Yeah, the Heritage Foundation.
That trumped that list that had her name on it. Yeah, he just picked from it.
And also, who paid $200,000 of Ben Kavanaugh's desk? And what did Trump say that one? And on that video clip where you see Kennedy, the Supreme Court judge, it was Kennedy, right? Who retired. That he, you could see the stop, and then he retired soon after that. I mean, look, this is not hyperbole, y'all.
Yeah.
Now,
can I say something? I didn't know bringing up this subject of fascism would be so scary. This is some scary shucks. it kind of takes me back when I was a small. Two of you on the panel might not remember during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I can remember our teachers telling us that any moment we could be attacked or something like that, and it could be all over. Let's run out in the hall and cover our heads in case a nuclear bomb falls.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, and it seems like me, all the places, all the people, dictators we talked about, Franco and Mussolini and Hitler and the fascism, it ended up failing. A lot of damage was done in the process, but it
Mhm.
ended up failing. So, I guess our conversation can continue to inform about what fascism is
Well,
and how it can destroy us. But I guess what do we need to do to keep making sure the message gets out there so more people can be aware? Or where does it start with our younger folks or something like that? Because you know, and we can say if Trump gets back in there, the main goal should be to make sure. I think it is in most cases, make sure he doesn't get back in there. But Trump is not alone out there. It's some other Trumps running around there and being
right
born every
behind him.
day.
If
So
it's not Trump,
is
it's
it right? Is it education? Is it do we have to in some of the movies we see get a bunch of people line them up and brainwash them into thinking right? I mean, where do we go from here? Because the conversation is just continuous about what can happen, but what can we do going forward? What is our responsibility to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen?
uh,
Teach
good.
acceptance a lot more. And the reason why I say that is that if we kill the aspect that we need to fear the other, then that will trip a lot of the dominoes that will eliminate the idea that fascism is something that is needed. Because you'll have a mental pluralism where you
Mhm.
accept so many different ideals all at once. And if you can do that, then you're not going to be so wedded to one that you're willing to literally push everyone else out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think I just wanted to read just a clip from Jason Stanley's "How Fascism Works," and it just is about anti-intellectualism, which is a tenet of fascism. And it says universities, and y'all listen to how familiar this sounds right now. Universities are branded as incubators of liberalism.
Mm-hmm.
I
Marx,
saw that. Yeah.
Marxism and feminism. Expertise no longer has any value. So we've got incubators of liberalism. Liberal literally means open mind. That's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, critical thinking is having an open mind, not
Yeah.
a fixed mindset. And then the attack on feminism, the attack on Marxism, and then expertise no longer has value. Facts don't matter. The fake news. It doesn't matter if this expert, because I have this expert that says differently, but their credentials don't match. And
Mm-hmm.
you have people, and you can look at COVID, right? And you could hear people go, "Well, I have my friend who's a nurse, or my doctor says," and it's we have to figure out, I think, the way to one, we have to protect schools. We the the people ignoring our public education system and what is actually happening, our public education system has to stop. We have to make sure everybody is focused on public education from primary, secondary, through higher, through universities. And because it's the anti-intellectualism that they're dumbing down America, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do something there. I don't know. I mean, other than going to college campuses, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, if you look at who votes,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
in the last presidential election, uh, Donald lost a high percentage of those who were college educated
Oh
folks,
yeah. Mhm.
and because they can look through all that crap he was saying and weed through it and says this don't add up. Now
Yep.
that other segment, those that voted for him, basically was either you're a high school dropout or you had a high school education, and that was it. That was
Mhm.
the majority of his population that voted for him. But if you look at even fast forward now, we just had our state elections in the state of Virginia. Right before that, you had this Confederate governor, Youngkin, who got out there talking about We have a problem with unisex bathrooms, sports, talking about boys playing girls' sports, education. We were trying to burn books across the country, and all this stuff that and giving rights to parents. And parents don't even go to PTA, all of a sudden showed up. So everything was falling down. Since the election, what have you seen? Zero. Nothing.
Yeah,
That's
so
because they're still
that
licking
is-
their wounds.
They're still looking at, but no, it's just a way of distraction. And so as we get close to the 24 election, you'll hear news of the caravan is coming. The others are coming over the mountain, and they'll have coming up from South America, and
Yeah.
And we're gonna in all these problems, and they're bringing disease and fentanyl and all this other stuff. And fentanyl, the Mexican population ain't bringing in tons and tons of fentanyl.
It's being made here.
Yeah, it's
But
being
you would,
here and being shipped in. And so,
And Colonel, you remember we had a guest on, and we had a guest, and he was definitely a Republican and Trumpster, and we wanted to talk about the policies there. And his main conversation was about fentanyl, which is important. It's something should be addressed. But that was his main topic, and his whole thing. We were trying to talk about policies and things like that, and he was throwing those scare tactics in, like you're saying.
yeah.
That was his main thing. This is what's happening. These people are bringing this in.
Mhm.
And
But I bet he
I guess
didn't-
you're right. I guess you're right.
I bet he didn't talk about the Sackler family, did he?
No, he didn't talk about anything of any substance beyond.
He didn't,
the-
right?
you know,
Our opioid
how
epidemic.
important.
Our opioid epidemic that was literally started by the American Sackler family. He didn't really have an opinion on that, did he?
I mean, we could have gone back and started talking about the crack, that epidemic and who that was geared towards. I mean, we could have faced him on that, but we were talking. He came on to talk about. We wanted him to, the main question started out, why are you supporting Trump? We wanted to know. We were curious to know, to Trumper, and he said he was going to come on and be honest with us. Why? Give us a good reason. Convince us. Where we would think different of you,
Right.
why you would vote for Trump, or why you would follow his ideologies.
Mhm.
And that conversation went nowhere. Several times I had to stop the colonel from. I thought the colonel was going to jump through the screen on him, but I could see. Yeah, I could see his frustration.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an example of us right here on Coffee Talk, which is what they do. Because if you watch his page, and I watch his page sometime, he talks all this trash. But when he came on camera with us, it was like he was focused on that one thing, and that was the message he wanted to get out to whoever was listening on his side.
You don't by chance remember who that was, do you?
Yeah, his name was Mike Ock. I can give you his his page. So
Okay, I'll look
and you might want to follow him.
Yeah,
I know who.
And I keep him up there so I can.
I follow
Mike is
too, like
still-
Rod Thompson out of Suffolk, who seemed like he would be very Trumpy conservative. Tim Anderson in Virginia Beach, I follow his pages too. He was always talking fentanyl too.
Yeah. By the way, where is Tim Anderson now?
Well, today he was getting his behind handed to him at the Norfolk Planning Commission. But anyway.
Oh, okay. I digress. I just wanted to know where he was. He was talking a lot of trash.
I want to pull on the thread a little bit because you mentioned the Sackler family, and I like
Okay,
how
go
you
ahead.
brought that up in relation to the fentanyl crisis because the fascistic idea could run and isolate fentanyl as something to be against, but if you aim it toward capitalism, then that would be a completely different thing. And I'm reminded of what I was taking notes a little earlier today for this talk. I found some quotes. I think there are a couple ones that we remember from Sinclair Lewis, but I wrote down one that meant a little bit more to me from his book, It Can't Happen Here, which he wrote in the mid-30s, I think, regarding about the rise of fascism possibly in America. And he said, in America, the struggle was befogged by the fact that the worst fascists were very prone to disowning the word fascism. and preached enslavement to capitalism under the style of constitutional and traditional Native American liberty. So they would like the idea of big business because that is American. That's we always like the free market, and that's like the best example of it is big pharma because look how successful they are. They wouldn't want to crack down on what the Sackler family does to Americans. They would just want to make too many laws to govern people who use stuff that would be fentanyl based, and that's where it comes back to the otherization because that's a great way to regulate others.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But you
I
know,
wanted to, I
yeah.
wanted to roll back to what we could do. To help make people more aware. You know, sort of like we're just cutting our own throat when we're telling people. People are saying that they're not going to elect Joe Biden because he's old.
Right.
And I watched a Democratic congressman, I believe, a few days ago talk about he was the new person to come along. He wasn't trying to make it a third party, but we have to get rid of Joe Biden. And if we go, and a lot of young people are saying we're not going to vote because he's feeble, he's old. But look at your alternative if you don't get up and vote. Look where you're going to be. There will be no voting. There may be a point where there will be no voting after this.
Is that Dean Phillips?
Yeah.
I think that was
It's
Dean
Dean Phelps. He's
Yeah.
such a piece of garbage. But I want to just to kind of answer that. I think that the conservatives and the Republican Party are professionals at weaponizing language.
Yes.
And so because they are professionals at weaponizing language, I don't know if I was on this show and I talked about how we need to when we're talking about the abortion, reproductive rights and stuff, and how people say pro-life, right? No, you're pro-forced birth. You are not pro-babies, you are pro-laborers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we have to start looking at the assignment of their language and how they're saying it. And then we need to create our own way to communicate that simply to the public and use different language because the language we're using is not working, but the language they're using is working. And just like the feeble, he's feeble. I mean, I hear this from young people all the time. And so I go with the and this works every time. I go with the, do you realize that the president doesn't pass laws? Can I explain to you how our government works in a very, like, I'm going to talk to you like a sixth grader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let me show you why his age isn't as big of a deal as you think it is, or you've been made to feel it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually seems, people go, oh, yeah, you make some valid points. And based on their limited civics lessons they got in high school or whatever, their own, as an adult, they can at least put together what I'm saying and go, oh, that actually makes a little bit more sense than just throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we
It's
need to.
also important. It's also important to know when people talk about his age, it's also about who you surround yourself with.
That's what I tell
If you
them.
have the right people around you, it doesn't matter how old you are. Think about the last president who he surrounded himself with. They either in jail or headed to jail,
Mm-hmm.
or making deals to stay out of jail.
Yeah.
So take a look at that. You're not looking at a man standing there by himself, you know, at a certain age. You're looking at somebody that's strengthened by the people that are around him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's who you're voting for. You're voting for him and the people he surrounds himself with, because that's who helps him make the decisions that he makes.
That's right. And it's not just him as an individual.
Right. You're voting for a team.
You're voting for a team, right? Yeah.
But getting back to what Johnny was talking about, what can we do? What can we do? And then we have to turn off Fox and go to
Number one.
get away from Facebook and TikTok and look for credible sources of news. Read the paper.
I'm gonna push back on you, Colonel, about the TikTok.
Well,
Yeah,
And
I'm
listen, this
I'm
is
not
why.
that personally scared of TikTok.
Well,
well,
this is
let
why.
me finish this comment though.
Go ahead.
For those, and I use TikTok, but you're leaving at Fox. Fox has never said anything good about since Joe Biden has taken over. I mean, zero, not one bill, not nothing. And
Mhm.
they fill 24 hours a day and talk about how bad things are. And so it's just like Hitlerism. And if I tell you it enough and you hear it enough, it's going to be so bad. But look at what he inherited. And you look at the last, I'll take out the last three uh, Republican uh, presidents that are out there. Their predecessors, who have been Democrats, have inherited a mess.
Yep.
We were so close to a depression. We had 100,000 people were dying every month or whatever. Thousands and thousands of people dying every day because of COVID. It's just because they didn't want Trump wouldn't tell you to wear a mask and don't get vaccinated, even
Ego.
though he got his
Even though
vaccine.
he was vaccinated. And all of Fox News viewers, just so the viewers know, all of Fox News was vaccinated as well because they weren't
One of the
allowed to come to
more
work.
That's
Yeah.
one of the more intriguing aspects of the fact that this movement got pretty weird even beyond Trump, because Trump has been very explicit that he got vaccinated. He loves the fact that he created the vaccine. You should go do it. None of the MAGA crowd supported that. So that's one thing they
He
just
doesn't talk about
let
it anymore. He only talked about it one a couple times. And
Mhm.
after when the MAGA people had already bought into it, he shut that down.
And I
Yeah, it
also
was
want
none
to,
of that repeat messaging like he does with other things.
yeah, I do want to follow up on your point that Fox News doesn't really give any credit to Joe Biden regarding anything, which is intriguing because they're one of the most loud voices in America that would drumbeat the support of what Israel is doing right now.
Mhm.
And who is also one of the foremost American politicians supporting that? The current president of the United States, Joe
Yeah.
Biden. And they're not going to mention that. They'll mention everything that he might say in a speech as if someone else was saying it, but not Joe Biden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the young people on TikTok are seeing those videos of Joe Biden hugging on Netanyahu when he flew to Israel.
Mhm.
And I think while they're, TikTok and Instagram and some of these social media sites can be, they can help foment some of this. They also have shed a huge light. Like, I mean, if not for TikTok, I would not be able to listen live, right, to a panel of people that is balanced. It's, for example, on Israel Palestine, I'll listen to a panel, 3 people that are pro Palestine, 3 people that are pro Israel with a really good moderator. And I'm able to listen to Jewish scholars in Israel at the time, like literally listening to them live right now while they're living in Israel, speaking about what is actually going on in Israel and in Gaza and speaking against the Israeli government. And so I wouldn't normally, like, without that, I wouldn't have access to seeing that. So I think that there's, I think that the social media has really, the advent of 24-hour news media was almost like kind of what got us here, right? But
Mhm.
now I think some social media platforms are able to open our eyes a little bit more and show us the things that the mainstream media is not able to show. But you can't rely on that. You have to vet the information that you're hearing. You have to do
Mhm.
the research yourself.
Mhm.
I want
Yeah.
to follow up on the 14 points. Number 4 was disagreement is treason. And we could see that a lot these days if we say go to Councilwoman Rashida Tlaib, who got censored on the House floor.
Yep.
She is considered treasonous. And why? Because disagreement with what's going on. And remember, she is of Palestinian heritage. So
Yeah.
of
She's our
all people
only
who would,
Palestinian actually in our federal government, elected in our Congress and Senate.
and they censored her.
And I
Yeah.
think what hurt me with that is that she got censored. I would expect the Republican Party to censor her. They were going after the AOC,
Ilhan Omar. Mhm.
but I did not expect the Democratic people, the Democratic side, to stand beside that, because
Me
right
either.
now there are many people that are going against Joe Biden simply because of what's happening in Israel. And I this is just John Gantz. I'm a firm believer that if you want to kill Hamas, I'm good with you go slaughter Hamas all day long. But to blow up a building to get one person is not the way to do it. I don't. And when we talked about the vermin. When you dehumanize people, when you watch them dehumanize people, it's easier to kill them. It's
Yep.
easier to kill them
Hey,
off.
have you guys heard of Republican Congressman Brian Mast out of Florida?
No, no.
Yeah.
State congressman or federal?
Federal.
Federal.
He was recently referenced in one of my favorite programs on Sunday night, last week tonight with John Oliver. And the most recent thing that they had was regarding the Israeli-Palestine conflict. And they showed a clip of him on the House floor saying the following. I would encourage the other side, and remember he's Mast, he's Republican, so he's talking about Democrats, to not so lightly throw around the idea of innocent Palestinian civilians, as frequently said. I don't think we would so lightly throw around the term innocent Nazi civilians during World War II. So this is a literal example of right now a Republican congressman is not only otherizing, but then dehumanizing Palestinians as a concept.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in World War
And he's
II,
not censured.
I mean, they
He's
had
not
Hitler
censored.
Youth.
Believe it.
well, in World War II, we carpet bombed and firebombed Dresden and other cities, Cologne. We did that. We burned them to the ground. And then, of course, we nuked Japan. So it's not like we have clean hands in any of this, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not, and we've never had clean hands.
Mm-mm.
So that leads back to the part, when have we been great? That's what we started with. When were we
Mhm.
that great shiny thing on the hill that everybody talks about? I haven't seen it. I have been here for 60 some years, and I haven't seen the shiny part of the hill. You
Yeah.
know, we get indoctrinated to think that, but we're just like any other country.
And let's not talk about Vietnam.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
See what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
we
Or
are we are
That's
not.
that's a show within itself.
or Iraq. I mean, when
So
we went in there to kill because of we went in there for a
Weapons
false
mass.
Yeah.
operation to go
Well,
kill somebody that wasn't even there.
I think that goes back to point number 14 is how, as Melissa touched on, that the vernacular of this fascistic side of Republicans reduces understanding so low on purpose. And what is a highlight of things that they have said about America for decades, going back probably past Reagan, but heavily used by Reagan, was the shining city on a hill, as you just referenced. But they also want to put up a huge wall around that shining city and make sure no one else is welcome to
Mm-hmm.
that city.
Yep,
Except who they want to be welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's an article that they published in the New York Times today, and it was and it talked about we should grieve for every young child that is Israelite that was killed or murdered, and we should cry for every Palestinian child that is killed. But the question is, right or wrong, how do you get the terrorists? Then nobody can answer that question.
Well, who's the terrorist?
The Hamas that did it.
Okay.
They attacked Israel. How do you go out to get them? That is the other question that perplexes everybody.
Well,
Well,
it's even more. It's more in depth than that. How did you put all these people in one local area, take them out of their homes, put them in a piece of land the size of Philadelphia, decide to make 2 million of them march down to the bottom South Philadelphia, and then blow up both North and South Philadelphia, and say we're looking for people. I mean, we're looking
well,
for
and
terrorists.
and just today, the IDF had dropped flyers. I don't know if you guys saw this, in 4 southern cities in South Gaza, saying
Get out.
basically you need to relocate in 4 southern cities. And so we see, and then they bulldozed the Yasser Arafat. They went into the West Bank, and the IDF there's a video of them bulldozing the Yasser Arafat big statue that they had. in the West Bank, and they Israel planted a flag on top of the hospital. The I'll share. I can't remember to pronounce it, but the hospital, they planted a flag on top of that, an Israeli flag. Like, please tell me they're not planning on occupying. Like, why would you have your IDF plant a flag?
That sounds
Well,
like June
you can't
1940.
control
That
every
sounds like
young
Dunkirk.
soldier out there that does that kind of stuff. We had same kids that are out there
Mhm.
that when we went to Iraq, and you'd see them come back, and they'd come back bragging, and they're talking about, oh, I shot so many sand ends, and how many kids I shot or women I shot outside the Humvee, took a 50 cal and mowed so many of these Iraqis down. They were proud about that.
Makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah. And that's what we perpetrated. And I call it the Georgia boys, because they didn't look like me, but they were proud to shoot people of color. And they were like gone back in the days where there's back in slavery that they could get away with it, and they got away with it.
Well, the fact that those white people found it perfectly acceptable to say
Yeah.
the sand N words around people of color that they
Yeah.
actually were serving with shows you exactly what kind of disgusting humans they were.
Yes, yes, yes.
And they argued. Some people argued that why doesn't Egypt take in the Palestinians? Why didn't Jordan take the
They
Palestinians?
shouldn't have to.
They don't have to, and they don't support the relocation of people off of their land.
Right. Why should they have to be taken in when you took their property, took stuff from them? You took their land.
The official answer is they don't want Hamas coming in, infiltrating them, their land.
Yeah, well, they created the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
That was from Egypt, but yeah.
If they get rid of, and we've gone so far away from
I know.
fascism, but if they get
Not
Gaza,
necessarily.
But not really. It's kind of related, John.
Yeah, Israel, we could say, is a very
I
fascist
can
state.
go with that.
Yeah.
But if they take Gaza, I believe the next thing they'll have is they get Gaza, they'll build. That'll be waterside community property for Israelis to come visit and hotels.
Well, after they start, because the Ben Gurion Canal project is supposed to start at North Gaza. And so when they blow that land, they want to make that Ben Gurion Canal to basically take business away from Egypt, because they could, in 1967, when they couldn't take the Suez Canal for themselves,
Right.
they decided to formulate a plan to make their own canal. And so that starts at North Gaza. So
almost like they're manifesting their destiny.
that sounds, they're manifesting the U.S. destiny, because when you've got 12% of global trade going through the Suez Canal, and Egypt is making like $9 billion a year from the Suez Canal, and American ships, like battleships and things like that, can't just go through, like, without every single ship that goes through there is pinged and tagged. Like, everybody knows who's going through that Suez Canal. The Ben Gurion would give an advantage to the United States military, because it's, Israel's a proxy state for the United States. So it would actually give cover for U.S. military in between the Red and the Mediterranean Sea.
Mm-hmm. Well, we actually pulled. Remember, Colonel, we pulled Bright Star, Operation Bright Star on the Suez.
Right.
We had military on the Suez on 90-day or 90-day rotations, I believe.
Yep. 90-day rotations.
90-day rotations, sitting on the Suez Canal.
Yeah. And so people there, that's a piece of the puzzle that I think, like, a lot of people aren't really aware of, that this has been in the works for like decades between the US and Israel, and that this is the economic piece that is tied to why I think it's a combination, with our support of Israel over all these years, is a combination of our penance for our contribution for the death of millions of Jewish people. Okay. So we have penance because we know that we were complicit, and we really essentially through that complicitness participated, right? And then it was a strategic economic opportunity for the United States, because they didn't want brown people to have nuclear weapons, right? But Israel's okay to have nuclear weapons. And then the economic piece of the canal going from the Med to the Red.
Right. But yes.
And I think that
Okay.
was what Talib had got censored for, was the sentence from the river to the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we've reached the hour. What a stimulating conversation we've had, and I don't think we're through with fascism. Fascism, and John, you have another. You suggested another topic that we will tackle later on, but we wanted to dive into it a little bit more because we like to have informed conversations here on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, and want to let you know that here it's called Portsmouth Coffee Talk, but we talk about world issues and everything, the country, throughout the country, and of course, we keep our eye on the city of Portsmouth and Hampton Roads, especially out there in Virginia Beach.
Here's the
But
world.
anyway, we want to thank everybody for being a part of this show this evening, John, Melissa, and Conrad, and of course, you, Colonel. And
Yeah.
Colonel, I guess I'll see you next week.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Doing our little family thing. Feel free, John, to fly down, fly up.
Yeah.
You know what we do on Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, y'all gonna be over at Betty's.
What
Yeah.
y'all
Well,
doing?
maybe we can family.
Thomas.
We have our family. We're all cousins, so we have our family
Oh,
Thanksgiving dinner at one of our cousins' house
Yeah.
in Virginia Beach. As a matter of fact, in
oh,
Virginia
Oh,
Beach every year. It's been an annual thing for a while, so
I love
we'll
that.
get together for that. So, but
Awesome.
anyway, thanks for everybody. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
And
everybody.
again, we want everybody that's watching on Facebook Live to please comment or like, and especially on the YouTube. If you first time watching, please subscribe and like and comment. We want to hear from that. And also, if you get a chance, go over and watch the Slim Nation One on One podcast, where yours truly has some conversations, one on one conversations with some very interesting people. So we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend and stay away from these colds. If you see somebody that looks like they have a cold, go the other way because
Yeah.
this is no joke. Anyway,
Thank you.
bless you.
Bye bye.
Take care, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
We'll see. Bye bye.